this in two parts. I said she has ear infections. So I had to take her in. I said I wasn't going to be there. If she wanted to leave them, she could, or we could just reschedule. So I said, I still have to go to the pharmacy. I'm going to wait for these prescriptions. I don't know how long they're going to take, because I'm like, I'm not hauling the kids in and out in the cold, especially when one doesn't feel good. So then he proceeds to tell me, oh, well, when she gets home, I'll let her know. And you guys can just reschedule. And I said, okay. And like, it was taking about 20 minutes for them to fill this prescription. And as I'm driving back and forth, you know, just across town to kill time so we're not just sitting in a vehicle, I can see her sitting parked by the side of my house with her lights on. And I was like, that's creepy. Like, why are you sitting there? Go home. You know I'm not here. So then the prescription was ready. I picked it up for her. Then told the kids, like, oh, we're just going to drive, like, on the outside of town, look at Christmas lights. And at that point, I didn't see her car anymore. So I'm like, okay, we'll make a lap, go home. And then as I pull up the back way of our street, still didn't see her car. So I pull in the driveway, and then all of a sudden, what do you know? Lights flicker on. She was parked by the neighbors. And she's like, oh, no, it's okay. It's just Grandma. She's like, I just wanted to, give them these gifts here. Oh, you're carrying all this stuff. Let me carry it in the house for you. And I said, okay, fine. So she was walking in the house right away. And then drops this, like, garbage bag full of wrapped up presents, start taking them out. And then I hear my son scream, these are from Dad. They say, Dad, I don't want them. Oh my God. And she panicked, and she literally, she almost took me out running outside of my house, because I was just coming in the door. And she took off leaving, and then I went to my kids, and I was like, wait, what's going on? And they said, these aren't from Grandma. Look down, sure enough, they're in his handwriting, little notes from Dad. So I called the police, let them know. They contacted him, they'd contacted him for the other OFP violation, with the text messages, and how he had violated it 15 minutes after he was served. And his response that time was, yeah, I did it, but I totally forgot that you served me. How do you forget you just got served an order for protection against your entire family 15 minutes ago? And whatnot. Second round of text messages for that violation was, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that, because we hadn't been to court yet. So I was like, whatever. At that point, when this had happened, we had actually already gone to court for the violations with the text messages, and the judge had explicitly told him, you can't do this, you can't have any contact, you can't send things, you can't give things, absolutely nothing. If you have a question, call the police department, call human services, don't do anything else. He asked him, do you have any questions? Do you have anything you're wondering about? Do you have any concerns? Because you're claiming your excuse, you're saying you're going to plead guilty, but you're saying you just didn't know you couldn't do that. So if you have any questions, now it's time to ask. No, I don't have any questions. And then this happened the very next day. Complete crap. He did get charged with it. We went to court and whatnot, because he was trying to fight it after saying, he was going to plead guilty. The first one, he ended up, he got convicted for the first violation. And then for the whole present thing, he tried using the excuse to the judge, I didn't know I couldn't do that. And the judge was like, nice try. You literally were in my court the day before for an OFP violation. I explained everything to you. I asked you if you understood and if you had any questions, and you said you understood and you didn't have any questions. I'm not buying that this time. And the city attorney was pushing super hard, you need to put this man in jail. He needs to go to jail. He needs to learn his lesson. And it was oh, he's got CP, he shouldn't go to jail. And then he broke his ankle, and so his attorney had argued that he didn't belong in jail because he had a broken ankle too. Sorry, there are people with all sorts of health issues who go to jail when they break the law. Why do you get special treatment? So the judge he ordered him to 90 days, but said he only had to serve 3. Gave him Huber privileges for those 3, or he could do 72 hours of community service within a month. Now, as part of these OFP violations, he then became court ordered to go to domestic violence counseling, anger management, different things like that. All the things that were contingent upon him ever having contact with the kids mostly became part of now his court order to stay the hell out of jail. I ended up moving, like, decided like we were not safe in this town anymore. Um, Ended up moving right after Christmas in January. I had found a house in Wisconsin. Um, Things were amping up. I was getting things thrown at the house. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't feel safe anymore. So my sister's husband came and like stayed at my house for a week, helped me pack, made sure we were safe, obviously. Because prior to that, I did come home one day because I had forgotten to lock the deadbolt and the door was open. It was quite obvious. Like the officers seemed like, well, we know who did this, but unfortunately, there's really nothing we can do about it, and whatnot. So he came, he stayed, he helped pack, got like the U-Haul and things rented, and then literally like one night we just started throwing everything into this U-Haul. It was coldest freaking day of the year, negative 50 degrees outside, and his mom is driving by like every 10 minutes, never stopped, just kept driving by, saw the U-Haul, then she starts calling me every 5 minutes. I don't answer any of her calls. She doesn't leave me any messages, but just keeps freaking calling. So that was super scary. We ended up finishing up loading the next morning because we were tired and exhausted, and I had a lifetime worth of things for me and 4 kids. Didn't take any of his stuff with us. And then finally, the next morning or the next evening, whatever it was, we drove out. It was like 6 o'clock at night. It was dark because it was winter. And I ended up getting pulled over in Northfield because we had a caravan of vehicles. We had like my sister in the front, then it was my niece, and then it was me, and then my brother-in-law was driving the U-Haul behind us. So that way nobody got stuck anywhere, safety issues, all that stuff. And I had took a yellow light that turned red when I was going through it, and lights flip on, cop pulls me over. He noticed that I had these kids, this dog, this cat. There was like toilet paper, like all sorts of things in my car, like plumb full. And he's like, why do you have all this stuff in your car? And I'm like, because I'm escaping a domestic violence situation. I'm like, do you see those 2 cars up there that just pulled over? I'm like, I'm following them. I'm like, any minute now, a U-Haul is going to come up behind me. I said, he's driving with all my stuff. I'm like, I'm trying to get the hell out of here. And I remember him looking at me going like, are you for real? And I said, yeah. I said, listen, I got my emergency OP on this date. We just had a hearing on November 4th. He violated it on these days. We had court. And he's like, well, do you got proof? Because he ran my license and it didn't pop up. And I said, it's not going to pop up under my name. I'm not the offending party. So I pulled out my order for protection papers, and he looked at me and he was like, well, damn, you are telling the truth. And I was like, yeah, I am. And whatnot. So then he was like, okay, he's like, I'm not going to give you a ticket. I want you to be safe. Don't run any red lights. If you see them turn yellow, just stop. Best of luck. Said, okay. We finally got to this house in Wisconsin at probably like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, unloaded a bunch of stuff and whatnot, slept for a couple hours. Next morning, my brother-in-law and my nephew had to drive back over because we still had stuff left at the house that needed to get transferred over. His mom calls me and I answer. And then she's like, oh, well, we're wondering if we can have access to the house just to look around. And I said, nope, court orders say he can't have any access to this house. And it's all locked up, so you can't get in it. And she's like, oh, well, he's wondering about your bank account. Does he still have access to it? And I'm like, you're literally violating the order for protection right now because you cannot call me and say that he wants. And so I had called the police department where I lived, explained, I had already showed them that I had this order for protection when I moved, told them about this phone call, and they're like, the guy was like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's a valid question. I was like, are you frigging kidding me? It's a joint checking account. It's not a valid question. And the order for protection says this cannot happen. And he's like, well, this will be his one slide. Like, this will be his one time that I let him get away with something. If he does anything more, I promise I'll do something. What the hell? Because at this point, I didn't know that I could have called the town where he lived to report this violation. I was told later that if I would have called that town to report that violation, they would have charged him with his 3rd OFP violation, which would have been an automatic felony, which would have been serious jail time. So time passes. I get a phone call from his counselor that he's doing his court order therapy with, and he's like, hey, I just want to check in with you. If if you're okay with that. He's like, because I don't think he's being realistic at all in what's going on. And I was like, well, no surprise there. And he's like, well, he's claiming that you're just mad at him, you had a fight, and you're a happy family, you're getting back together. And I was like, no, we're not getting back together. I'm like, I literally moved out of state. I have an order for protection. He's like, yeah, I tried to talk to him about that people, don't take out OFPs when they're just kind of mad at their spouse, and judges don't grant OFPs with no contact with children for no reason. But my ex was adamant that we were a happy family. This was just a misunderstanding. We were getting back together. We were still in love and all this other crap. And he even told me, he's like, I think he's delusional. He's like, you need to be careful. And I was like, yeah, I know, thanks. And whatnot. So then, I had to wait like 6 months to establish residency in my state before I could file for divorce, because I could have gotten back to Minnesota and done it there, but because I was no longer living there, I didn't qualify for legal aid, and attorneys were wanting, like $5,000 plus down, which I didn't have. Begged them to work with me in any way or fashion, and they just said, nope, we want money. And I was like, well, I don't have any. And whatnot. And then I started getting a barrage of cards and things from his mom. She actually addressed them to the kids. Like for Valentine's Day, she sent them all these cards, and the one actually for my youngest daughter was filled with garbage. Like just rude and disgusting. And then magazine subscriptions showed up. Like saying like, oh, with love from your grandparents. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, how did this happen? I ended up having to call the magazine company and tell them that not only did they have to stop this subscription, but they needed to remove my address from their database completely, like shut the whole thing down. Like, they're not supposed to have this, and whatnot. And then it was brought to my attention because I had stayed with the Allina Health system when we first moved, because I didn't want to have to worry about transferring records and things. And come to find out, I found out his mom was accessing our medical records to find out where we lived to send these magazines. So I then called the Newell Medical Center, made a complaint with the head of the hospital president, saying that she was using her badge to access my private medical records, or my kids' private medical records, and this was not okay. They said that they would do their little investigation and let me know, and and yeah, she barely got like a slap on the wrist. They didn't want to deal with it. They never did, because that hospital has a really hard time keeping employees because all of the good ones leave. And so they didn't want to lose her as an employee, so they didn't do shit about it. So yeah, that was me leaving. That's how I finally got away. Obviously, I'm still fighting him constantly. Like when I went to finally get divorced, when I got my residency and I got approved for like Judicare in Wisconsin, I had lawyers both that were, with Judicare, and ones that I was trying to say like, I'll make a payment plan with you, telling me, oh, well, since he's left you alone in terms of trying to see the kids since you moved to Wisconsin, because even in our hearing for the OFP, when the judge said, hey, you have to do all this stuff in order to even ask to see these kids, his response was like, okay. And if I do end up doing all of them and ask and you say no, that's okay too. So like he acted like he totally didn't care, which was a fair representation. He didn't give a crap. So then finally, I meet with this attorney. I leave her office in tears because she's like, oh, the safest thing for you is to stay married. It's the safest thing for your kids. This is the only way your address is protected. This is the only way you can assure that he's not trying to have contact with the kids, because so far he hasn't. I'm like, why the hell would I stay married to an abusive person? The whole point was me leaving and getting a divorce and not being tied to this person anymore. You're telling me to stay safe, I need to stay married? No, thank you. Talked to my advocate, and she was like, that's bullshit. And I was like, I know it's bullshit, but what am I going to do? The attorney told me I'd be taking a huge risk by getting a divorce. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, I'm not staying married to this man. So I went back to her office, and I gave her everything that I had, and I said, listen, we're filing for this damn divorce. And you need to keep my address protected. And she told me that if I filed for divorce, I had to give it to him. And I said, no, there is a Wisconsin statute that says if I have an order for protection, my address is sealed. He does not have a right to know what it is. He can know what county I live in. He can't know what city I live in. He can't know my street address, nothing. And she threw a big fit, and she was like, well, you know, if you want me to be to your attorney, you need to let me do my job. If you're not going to let me do my job, if you don't think I'm fit to do my job, if you think you're smarter than me, then we can just end this whole thing right now. And I fired right back at her, and I'm like, excuse me? I said, I have been silenced for so long. What I'm doing right now is being assertive, and I'm educating you, because clearly you didn't know about this statute because you were going to put me at risk and show off my address. I made you aware that this statute existed and that I wanted to use it, and it applied to my case. I'm sorry that you didn't know that and you were offended by that. I said, but I am not about to start shutting up now. It's my job to advocate for myself and for my children to ensure their safety. So if you don't like it, we can file a complaint right now. She was like, oh, it's okay. Just a misunderstanding. Like, everything's good. And then he had responded back to I found out, like, Judicare wouldn't pay to serve him. So if I wanted him served by the sheriff, I'd have to pay for it. And it was expensive, more than I could afford, because I had 4 freaking kids I was trying to take care of, and whatnot. They said I could have anybody else I knew serve him. They just had to get us, like, to sign this paper saying that they served him on this date at this time, and then have their signature notarized. So I had my friend serve him. I had my sister watch my kids. We drove all the way to New Ulm. Noticed his car wasn't home, waited and waited and waited. We knew he worked at a particular dealership, went there, and they said, oh no, he works at the other one out of town. So we drove to that town to find out they had already closed. So then we go back, he's still not home. We start driving around downtown to see if he's at, like, a bar. Couldn't find his car. Then she's like, oh, I really gotta pee. Like, we've been driving for hours. So we stop at the Burger King for her to go to the bathroom, and I was like, okay, if he's not home when you're done, I'm like, I'll figure out a way to pay the damn sheriff, because I'm like, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I want to go home. So she got done going to the bathroom, got in the car, we drove over. Sure enough, he had just gotten home. And they said, okay, he's home. Saw that, excuse me, his vehicle was there. Saw the bathroom that he uses, because it was separate from his parents. Light flicked on. I said, okay, go do your thing. Parked like a block away. She walked down. She knocked on the door. The best part was that he absolutely hated I guess karma a little bit. She knocks on the door. His mom answers and looks at her like, the hell are you doing here? And she's like, is so-and-so here? Why? Is he here? He overhears this, comes up, and he's like, the hell do you want? She's like, hi, I have some favors for you. And then she handed him to him, and she said the look on his face, she thought she was going to get punched. His mom literally had to put her hand on his shoulders and pull him back. And then she took off running, and she called me, and she's like, I'm coming. Oh my God, please make sure the doors are unlocked. I need to hop in your car. We need to get the hell out of here. He's pissed. And I was like, yeah, no, okay. Drove up to a stop sign. Doors were unlocked. She hopped in. We locked the doors. We took off. Then we went and got her signature notarized, and that's how I ended up serving him. His response to being served, the statement saying, hey, she's filed for divorce, she wants divorce. He was contesting it on the grounds that he did not believe our marriage was irretrievably broken. Dumb. Then the other part was because he had no proof of where I was living. So how could I file over there? Again, no. And then the other thing that he put in this motion was, well, if she agrees to drop the divorce, I promise I won't ask to see the kids. Who the hell puts that in a motion to the court? And so obviously it got shot down. You can't force somebody to stay married. My residency was established with the court. He just wasn't allowed to have it. And it only takes one person to say your marriage is irretrievably broken. So that's what we did. Then the fight began of him having access to the kids and whatnot. But I'll get into my divorce story another day and time, because this one's already long enough. But that is what leaving domestic violence and my abuser looked like for me. Doesn't look the same for everybody. It's scary for everybody. But that's how mine happened. So again, silent no more. Use your voice. Advocate for yourself. Advocate for your children.